Hello and welcome back. I'm Mike Cohen. This is the Oakland County Child Killer cases, going over some stuff. This one is the full episode 2, which is going to focus on victim 3, Kristine Mihelich, and some of things that were about her case and some of things that were, really different from hers from the other ones. In the last episode, we talked about the disappearance of Mark Stebbins and murder, and Jill Robinson, which was, quick recap, Mark Stebbins was taken on February 15th, 1976, and then he was found in an office building parking lot in 1976 on February 19th. And then we had Jill Robinson, who disappeared on December 22nd, 1976, and then was found the day after Christmas on December 26th on a pretty busy road located pretty close, right across the street from the Troy, Michigan Police Department. There's some things about Kristine Mihelich that, this is the case that really grabbed me and why I took such an interest in this case. And I was very, the whole story and everything that happened is very heartbreaking. But with Kristine, I had, I said, there was a connection, and I just felt so bad for this girl because, like I said, there are a few things different with her case than everybody else. And like I said, Mark and Jill, they didn't receive good treatment when they were together or not together, but when they were held in captivity, and they were gone for 4 days. Kristine Mihelich is the youngest victim. Mark and Jill were both 12. Kristine Mihelich is 10, and she's gone for 19 days. She's missing for, and it's just heartbreaking when I went deeper and deeper into this case to see the type of people that were suspected and involved. And my heart really goes out to that little girl and possibilities and stuff. But I also have theories on why she was kept so long. And in the last episode, I mentioned that victim 3, Kristine Mihelich, and victim 4, Timothy King, were higher profile kids. And plus, we're looking at more kids being taken also in a shorter period of time. So it's taken a lot more seriously, because when I talked about Mark and Jill, it was kind of not as much. There was the alert and the sense of urgency came a day later. Kristine was taken very differently. Pretty much as soon as she was reported missing, they were on it. They were on it. And, I've heard that she has her grandfather was a cop, Bob Bell. And then there's a guy, Corey Williams, who's on the second task force later on when more evidence is pulled up, that he remembers the day his dad, who was also a police officer in Michigan, got that phone call from Bob, my granddaughter's missing, please help me find her. So I'm going to go into Kristine Mihelich. So Kristine Mihelich, her birthday was April 25th, 1966. She was 10 years old. And she was last seen in Berkeley, where she was from, January 2nd, 1977, a week right after Jill. So between Mark and Jill, there's a bigger gap, and a week after Jill, which is also probably why Jill's case wasn't focused on as much and not as much press, because Kristine literally disappeared a week to the day after Jill was found. So Kristine Mihelich, 10 years old, of Berkeley, was reported missing on January 2nd, 1977. The story behind her is it's right after Christmas. She got to go visit one of her friends and stayed there for a little bit to visit. That was in a different town. And she's home, and she was a very good kid, to the understanding, she was very helpful with her mom. She got along very well with her family. She got along very well with her stepfather and her siblings. She was a very lovable kid, great to be around, a good-spirited kid, easy to get along with, and just an all-around great kid. So the story is so she wants to go to the store. She has some money, and she wants to go to the store to a 7-Eleven to go buy a magazine and some candy and something to drink. And her mom isn't really thinking about what happened with Jill. It's more the traffic that she would have to cross to get to the 7-Eleven. So at first she's kind of like, she doesn't really want her to go. But, Kristine finally, gets her mom to say, okay, you can go. So Kristine, she heads over to the 7-Eleven, and I think an hour or so goes by, and she doesn't come back. So Kristine's mom's pretty worried. So she goes over to the 7-Eleven and finds out that, yes, she was at the 7-Eleven. The clerk said she was there for a little bit looking through the magazines, and she bought a magazine, some candy, and a soda. And that was like the last sighting of her. So, Kristine's mom immediately went back to the house and reported her missing. Now, the second Kristine was reported missing, that's when the police were like, okay, we got to get on this now. There's something going on. So with Kristine, it was so she was last seen at 3. So this is between 5 and 6 o'clock. Police are out looking for her. There's about police going door to door. The news goes on and they're talking about her missing. Also found out, I heard in one of the podcasts I listened to, she did make a stop. And note this because I feel like it's important. So her mother worked at this bowling alley right near the 7-Eleven, and she was, I guess someone said they saw her stop there real quick, to go visit this guy that was there that, she kind of had a crush on, just to go say hi. And she knew the people there because her mom worked there. So she was there, and then the 7-Eleven. The order of which she went to them, I haven't really figured out. But so she was seen there. So she goes disappearing. And the police are right on this. By the next day, cops are still going door to door looking for this girl. And they're really looking for her. They are not stopping. There's 21 cops going all throughout Michigan looking for this girl. It's on the news. There's a collection just in case that someone comes up with ransom. So people are donating money to try to help her, or if someone calls. Because remember, Kristine is gone much longer than the other kids. She's gone for almost 3 weeks. So, there's media coverage. There's a helicopter out looking for her too. So there's helicopters looking. There's cops going door to door. There's constant news coverage. And they do this for about 2 weeks. And one of the officers I heard about and read about, he said, maybe because this investigation is so hot that possibly the people who have her or person who has her will kill her because of the attention. So they kind of let it die down after the second week. And on January 21st, 1977, Kristine Mihelich is found in a snowbank on Bruce Lane in Franklin Village. And Bruce Lane is a place where the higher, upper middle class kind of live. Nothing really goes on. But a mailman finds her and sees a small hand coming out of an embankment. And, he immediately, they call police, and the police get to the scene, and it's determined that it's Kristine Mihelich 19 days later. Determination that she was smothered, and she died hours before, within that time that she was dropped off into that snowbank. During her autopsy, as for sexual abuse, I go with inconclusive because one person said that she was and then took it back. Another examiner said she wasn't. They took it up higher to a higher ranking of it, and they determined that she was not sexually abused, and so they say that she wasn't. She was found in the same clothes that she had on, just a few things her shirt was on backwards and tied in the front, and her mother said that she usually tied it in the back, and her boots were tucked into her pants, and that's something Kristine wouldn't have done. They found her in the same clothes that she had on. That didn't seem to have as much wear and tear on them, but they found her in the snowbank. But it was so cold that day, and she was out, that they couldn't do the autopsy until January 22nd because she was frozen. Because during that time, that was a pretty harsh winter for Michigan, and the average was about 12 degrees to my understanding. So after Kristine excuse me, body was found. A week later, there are these guys that are picked up, Greg Green and Christopher Bush. Seems to be a little link here. But before I get to that, on the January 28th thing, when they got Greg Green, I'm going to talk a little bit about the crime scene. So the crime scene, it seems as if there was one set of footprints that she was just, dropped on that snowbank, and there was some snow brushed over her on this dead-end road in a residential area. Now there was one cop who sat there and like he analyzed like the tire marks and where it went, and he said that it was an early 70s Le Mans with damage to the rear trailer hitch. So you're starting to see the same car seemed to be involved in a lot of the sightings and tips. So and also mark that car, because with the victim Timothy King after her, there's a reason why. So this car that's been known and it seems to be confirmed with body damage is an early 70s Le Mans. We'll go with blue because it was seen in the other two. So they get there, but a few things happen on hers that is kind of like not really the best way to go. So a helicopter came, and that helicopter kind of blew snow over, so it made like the footprints harder to like read, but there was definitely just one person who dropped her at this site. And so her autopsy was taken the next day, and they went in with that. But there were things found on Kristine that later come into play. There were 2 hairs found in her mouth and 1 on her jacket, which later will have a DNA match to an individual. So Kristine is gone for the longest amount of time, 19 days. And to me, that's horrific. The more you learn about some of the suspects that are in here, like I just think about that 19-year-old, that 10-year-old girl locked in and trapped for 19 days. Like, she probably just wanted to go home. She was probably really scared, and it really bothers me. Like, her case really, really just bothered me. She's 10. And when you're 10, it's like, all these kids are young, so it's tragic what happened to all of them, but she's like 10. She's in 5th grade. And it's just such an awful thing to think about for a 10-year-old to endure for almost 3 weeks of, like, what happened to her. And like, I have theories. Like I said, there were certain locations that are disclosed through podcasts and things I've watched. And I always, like I said, at the end of like Jill and Mark, where I think she was held. So there is a place that one of the gentlemen, Chris Bush's family had, which was a cottage out in South Lake, about 30 miles away, which would make it why it was much harder to find her going door to door in these areas, in these counties where the sightings are, and where the other ones were taken just going to look for this kid. That's where I believe they were holding her. Also, during her autopsy, there was found that she had carbon monoxide in her system. Not enough to kill her, but determined that she was in a small area with a space heater or some type of a stove that would cause carbon monoxide. It's the 70s, things are different. So that makes me think that she was held at that cabin on S Lake owned by the Bush family. Like I said, this is just a theory. My other theory about Kristine is the reason why she was held so long and kept alive is actually opposite of what that officer said when he said, let's cool it down because maybe they'll kill her. I think because they were out looking for her so hard, there was so much coverage on it. I think that's what made it harder for them to figure out how to dump this body and get rid of it, which caused them to keep her much longer. And even though there is a week almost where there's no coverage, they might have thought it was a trap, that they're still out looking but not saying anything. So I think because of how aggressive they were looking for her, that is what made them keep her longer. Now, her mother, in a comment, Deborah, states, and it's really sweet what she says, and the way that they talk about Kristine and how sweet she was and how she got along with her family and everything, is maybe the killers enjoyed her company. And part of me really hopes that maybe that's true. Like, she was such a sweet kid that they just had a hard time doing things to her or hurting her. And that's why they kept her so long. And, for 3 weeks almost, for a 10-year-old girl standing less than 5 feet, weighing 80 pounds, and you see some of these guys, you're just like, wow, it's the worst. It's horrific, and it breaks my heart even thinking about it. So once Kristine's found and everything, a week later, they pick up a guy by the name of Greg Green. And Greg Green is getting picked up for some sexual misconduct on, I think it was a 13 or 14-year-old boy. So they're investigating him on this. And in his investigation, he says, I know who killed Mark Stebbins. It was Christopher Bush. So this gives them enough to like, okay, let's pull in this Chris Bush guy. So they get Chris Bush in, and they start asking him questions. And some of the questions that they ask him, now this is January 28th, 1977. We have not gotten to the fourth victim yet. So they talk to Chris Bush, and Chris Bush and Greg Green both are pretty much known for sexual misconduct on minors that are males, like boys. So he comes out and he starts talking about how, yeah, I've done this, and he's already facing counts in 4 counties of sexual misconduct, and so is this Greg Green guy. So we kind of have like a crack here, like, yo, all right. So some weird things happen in his interrogation that kind of makes you think like, okay, yeah, there's something going on here. And what they do is kind of like, why would you do that? So Chris Green literally in this interrogation admits to having an attraction to boys, admits to like, trying to have sex with them. And then it gets strange when he starts talking about the locations of where he tries to pick them up. In one of the locations, he mentions Ferndale, Mark Stebbins. He mentions Royal Oaks. Joe Robinson. He mentions like the Berkeley area, Kristine Mihelich. In fact, he even mentions that bowling alley. So here's something. So I think when Kristine went to that bowling alley, she must have got picked up on that radar. So I kind of wanted to think like, and I don't know, maybe it was, or maybe like there's so many fuck ups in this case. Were people questioned at that bowling alley? And did they show them pictures like, hey, did you see this guy, Chris Bush and Greg Green at this place on that day Kristine went missing? Because this guy's like, I'm not a cop, but these are bells and whistles clicking to me. And I'd be like, maybe we should go ask around, especially this guy. Apparently they call him Steve. I don't know if that's his real name. The guy that Kristine went to go say hi to. So it's like, were they there? And like, because that's a key indicator, like maybe this is where she went second, and this is like where she got picked up, because that clerk said she saw her in that 7-Eleven and she walked out and everything seemed fine. I also think Kristine might have been found if they took that Blue Le Mans into consideration more from the first two, or kind of like looked at all the evidence for the first two. But, at this time, they weren't really connecting the two because, like I said, Mark Stebbins happened in February. Jill happened in December. Mark was a boy. Jill was a girl. Jill was shot in the face. Mark was killed by suffocation. But Kristine's now found the same way Mark was. No sexual abuse inconclusive with Jill Robinson, but still suffocated, found the same way. And now this is, unfortunately for Kristine, because I feel like, if they started looking deeper into these, maybe they could have got answers as to where she was, especially with a car with a brake light out and body damage on a Le Mans. It's going to be easier to point out. But like I said, I think she was at that lake 30 miles away, and they weren't thinking about areas like that or looking, in that area. They were looking in the other counties. So, so now they're like, okay. And like I said, she's a high-profile kid, granddaughter of a police officer. Now we're starting to see there's a problem. And the fact that Jill and Kristine were taken so close together, we have an issue here. So now they got this Chris Bush guy in, and like I said, he talked about those 3 locations and even mentioned that bowling alley specifically. He was asked questions of, like, he would say, me and Greg would sit there and talk about fantasizing about kidnapping young boys, holding them captive. And when they asked him, what would you do with them? He couldn't answer that question. But here we go. This is the MO of this killer. And you just talked about the areas of where these kids were taken. And you just said you fantasize about holding kids. He even went into how they would do it. And Chris Bush, I guess, owned a restaurant. One of them would work during the day and one of them would work during the night. So someone was always with constant supervision of the child. How do you not realize you have the fucking guy? Like, I just can't believe it. Like, this is like detective work. I mean, there were some good cops on this case, but like some of them, I'm just like, what were you thinking? This is the guy, okay? So Chris Bush takes a polygraph, and he's also charged in 4 other counties for sexual misconduct. Greg's charged with the same thing, but I think they say he posted bail. That's kind of weird because it was all paperwork, but some say he was in jail during this next abduction, and some say that he wasn't, but we'll say that he was out, So it seems like he was out. Evidence points to he was on bail before his sentencing. So here we go. We got these guys, and then there's the reason why they got them is these kids, like I said, remember in Mark and Jill's episode, these guys were doing things in the summer. Well, during the summer, they were just molesting young boys. They weren't really taking these ones in the summer, but these kids started to speak out and started to, say stuff about, what happened. And that's why they were being looked into. But at the same time, you got to sit there and say, all this equals to exactly what's going on. We might want to have to go, let's go look at these guys' houses. Let's go, look into this Bush family. But here's the thing about Chris Bush. He's the son of a CFO, one of the head ones, I think maybe even the head one of GM. So this guy's got a lot of money, okay? And, so there's a big thing right there. Why? And then you'll see also that Greg Green does not get the same treatment that Chris Bush gets. So, like I said, there's also a polygraph that Chris takes that apparently he passed. And that's why they let him go. But it's found out much later, Chris Bush did not pass that polygraph. So that's where we're at. And like I said, I think that Kristine could have been found. I find her case, like all these cases are horrific, but I just feel so bad for Kristine Mihelich, and I'll show you a picture of her. This is Kristine Mihelich, the picture that was in the paper when they were looking for her. Like, she's a 10-year-old girl. She's, 80 pounds. She's 10. Think about how 10-year-olds are being held by full-grown adults for 19 days with who the hell knows what's going on. And I just feel extremely heartbroken for this kid in particular, and I listen about her case and really just dig into it, and it's just heartbreaking with her, and that's all with that. But so I think also that Mihelich's case, because when I'm just doing simple detective work of trying to think of one, so she was held the longest, so she would probably have the most answers. The DNA was hard back then, and they did find, like I said, they found 2 hairs in her mouth and 1 on her jacket, which will later come into play, and also kind of link Chris Bush and Greg Green a little bit more to this. But, I feel like looking into her and going more into things and really digging, and I know a lot of autopsies were mishandled, evidence was mislabeled, retracted, things disappeared during this case. So I understand it might be hard, but I really feel that third victim, if really dug deep enough into, will uncover more answers than the other victims. So that's all I really have to say about that. And I really hope you just think about that. Because like I said, I just want to bring awareness to the case. And what I really want you to think about is there's this 10-year-old girl held for 19 days and then found in a snowbank, frozen over, suffocated, and that to me is the worst thing ever, and I can't. It's just I just get a little upset about that one. So in the next episode, I'm going to talk about the 4th and final victim, Timothy King, some of the things that went on during his investigation, and go more deep into Greg Green and Chris Bush. So I hope that you'll stick with me through that, and I really hope that you do check out some of the books, The Kill Jar by J. Reuben Appelman, and his podcast, You Know They Know, And I hope you look into the Children of the Snow on Hulu and Eddie White's podcast, because they're going to go even deeper with actual documents, things that were said, like people that were involved, and a lot of evidence. And you can kind of come to your conclusion, and I think it'll be similar to mine. But I've gone deeper in just thinking about where these kids were held. And like I said, again, I'll just recap. Like, I think that Mark Stebbins was held at that trailer with Arj Sloan. I think Jill Robinson, which wasn't really, her case was just kind of brushed to the side because Kristine went disappearing so fast, and they didn't really think the two were connected. One's a boy and girl. I think she was at Greg Green's house, and I believe Kristine Mihelich was at that S Lake location that was owned by the Bushes. So, like I said, episode 4 will be about the fourth and final victim, Timothy King, and go a little bit more into Greg Green and Chris Bush.